it'd be reasonable to suggest that your favorite hockey team went through a couple of really tough tests over the weekend. I'm looking forward instead to a different kind of test that might mean even more. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Hurricanes 4, Penguins 3 in overtime yesterday in Raleigh. The Penguins haven't won there since 2018. That's just nuts. That's one of the nuttier stats probably in hockey, considering especially around 2018 and 2019, the Penguins were, coming right off championships and were pretty good. I've seen that for a long time as a bad matchup, Pittsburgh versus Carolina. Largely because if you think about the style, and even for that matter, the personnel that the Hurricanes have deployed, Sebastian Aho's still there now, but when they had all their various Teravainens in the process, they basically play keep away. They have the puck almost all the time, and it drives you nuts. Now, in overtime, they had the puck all of the time. One Penguin made physical contact with the puck in the 90 seconds of the extra session, and that was only Alex Nedeljkovic making the initial save before Aho put in the rebound. That's who they are. And if you're a proud, skilled team like the Penguins, it's embarrassing. If you've participated in hockey in any form at any level, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You hate that team more than any other team you play. That team that just has the puck all the time. Because you feel like an idiot out there. You feel like you're not doing anything. You're wondering if you shouldn't have just stayed home on the couch. And in that overtime, Sidney Crosby, the preeminent player of his generation, didn't touch the puck once. And by the time Aho finally scored, you could see it all over his face. Like, this was like, what was I even doing out here? And the same goes for Chris Letang. Anyway, they ended up getting the point, and they got a point from the Stanley Cup champs right before that in Sunrise. The trip as a whole, including the game in Detroit, was an 0-1-2 dud, unless you decide to compartmentalize it and say, well, they got 2 points in places where they normally wouldn't. It's still 2 out of 6 points. It's a dud. However, one positive resonated through the entire thing. They continued playing well. If you're one of those people who doesn't like to hear that, even though it's true, feel free to turn the show off right now. But they did. They did. The thing they started, in my mind, though they'd been building up to it beforehand against the Islanders, they sustained it all through this trip. I had a feeling that they would. That's the way they're kind of rolling right now. You know what other feeling I happen to have? That game that they're going to play tomorrow night here in Pittsburgh against the Blue Jackets is one of those that you look at on the schedule and you go, oh no. And not just because Columbus is surprising some people. They've got one of the youngest rosters in the NHL. They got guys or kids, I should say, like Adam Fantilli, who are making things happen and making the Blue Jackets be better than the bottom feeder that had been broadly expected of them, and that's to their credit. It's also not anybody's concern here. What is of concern, at least to me, is that motor that the Penguins were revving up throughout this trip and before that, that is exactly the kind of motor that gets routinely turned off whenever you look across the ice and see the Blue Jackets. It just is. It just is. I'm not saying that because the Blue Jackets beat them once already. I'm saying it because there isn't a built-in fear of getting outpaced, outmanned, outshone. And so you go into Sunrise and you see the Panthers over there and your last images of them, well, in addition to having beaten them already here at PPG Paints Arena, is that, they're raising the cup and there's Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Reinhart and Alexander Barkov and Aaron Ekblad and all those guys, and you go, well, hey, man, if we get a W tonight, this is nice. You don't think that. It's not human nature when you see Columbus. You just go, yep, here's another work day. You're going to punch a clock somewhere. And that, to me, is a bigger test of this recent trajectory. If the Penguins are going to make the playoffs, and I will remind that given the overall state of this conference, that's a very doable thing. And if they're going to be the kind of team that they hope to be this season, and for that matter, if they're going to be the kind of team that they need to build themselves up to be, meaning when the younger players arrive from Wilkes-Barre or wherever, these habits, this identity that they've shown over these last 3-4 games, that has to be consistently presented. It can't be something that Mike Sullivan's got to drag kicking and screaming out of them. And that means you got to treat the Blue Jackets as what they are by approaching it the same way and doing it and getting the results. Alex Nedeljkovic was down on himself after the game last night in Raleigh, especially the Penguins blowing the 2-goal lead and giving up 3 in the second period. This is some of what he had to say to reporters there, including our own Taylor Haas.
Yeah, we haven't really done that in a while. We blow a lead like that, so it's tough. I think we'd like another save or two there in the second period to bail them out. Got beat 3 times clean high, so it's a tough one to swallow.
Well, good. Everyone needs to feel that way. And by the way, a lot of others expressed something similar. They weren't satisfied with it. They certainly weren't celebrating it, meaning getting the point. Because that edge, that can't leave them. The moment it does, they're toast. When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Abandoned ship, Bob. Sell the team. Are you a Pirates fan who is angry or apathetic about our perennial losing baseball team? Do you feel helpless because you don't know how to make a difference? Well, good news. We have something you can do about it. Join our Sell the Team movement. We're a group of passionate fans voicing our frustration and demanding change through billboard campaigns, press outreach, protests, and involvement at local city government meetings. Go to OurTeamNotHis.com to get involved.
Today's J1Q comes from Thomas, who asked, DK, you talked a lot this summer about how much you liked the Rutger McGroarty trade. I'm still not a big fan of that transaction. Braden Yeager did have a tough time in the World Juniors just now, like most of his Canadian teammates, but he was wearing the C, which tells me something. He was the top face-off performer. McGroarty, on the other hand, has had close to no impact at all in Wilkes-Barre with 12 points in 26 games. To me, that's pretty disappointing. I know it's his first pro season and all. Thomas, I think these are fair things to bring up even now to an extent. It doesn't make them significant. There's a difference. It's fair in that they're both kind of in similar spots. McGroarty's obviously a year ahead, but significant. One funny thing about prospects, and this is true in really any sport, is that what they're doing as younger players might not be relevant to what they would do or what they would need to do at the top level. The ultimate example, at least in my mind, is a football one. In fact, it's a Johnny football one. Johnny Manziel, of course, the all-universe college quarterback, so spectacular at everything they did that his college had to add all kinds of seats to their stadium, and he was seen, by some anyway, not everybody, as just a surefire living legend in wait upon arrival in ... Cleveland. So he gets to Cleveland. He doesn't have a skill set that matches what an NFL quarterback needs to do. And he bombs in precisely the way that a lot of the sport's more respected draft analysts had forecast. Not his fault. College game is different in a lot of ways than the NFL. And one of them is that if you're not all that tall, you're going to have a difficult time seeing over tall defensive linemen. Alas, poor Johnny did not grow. When Yeager was in the Penguins system, in particular when he was in settings with the NHL team like training camp, he reminded me, and I say this in the most positive way, of a baby-faced Daniel Briere. Briere was a really solid scorer for a lot of years in the NHL, a lot of those in Philadelphia, and he just kind of had a nose for the net as well as a dynamic finish from distance with his wrister. So in some ways, Yeager is a little bit of a throwback, and he looks like someone who's going to be able to finish in the NHL. He looks like someone who's going to be conscientious. You mentioned the C on his sweater, so he's going to be able to finish without becoming the next Daniel Sprong. And there's going to be room for him. There's going to be room for him in Winnipeg sooner rather than later, even as loaded as the Jets appear to be right now. But what had me stoked about McGroarty's film and everything that I'd heard about him upon arrival is that he fits so many different needs that the Penguins will have, and for that matter, currently have, once he gets his basic game into gear. And let me explain what I mean by that, because I spent a lot of time with this kid in camp just now. His positioning is at a collegiate level, meaning he was always the guy who scored all the goals and whatever else here, and it didn't really matter all that much where he was going to be, when he was going to be there over the rest of the rink. Everyone recognized that. Everyone in camp. They also recognized that he wasn't moving his feet often enough, while he doesn't have a lazy bone in his body. Now think about that for a second. Why would you just stop skating unless you're just like, that's not for me? Well, here again, the reason was that he didn't have defined defensive roles before getting here. So one thing that's got to be understood is that a big part of McGroarty's ongoing mission in the AHL is to become more responsible at all parts of the rink. They know he can shoot. They know he can pass. They know he can skate. They know he can hit. They know he brings energy. They know he brings vocal enthusiasm. They love that part of him, and they should. The kid just lights up every room he's in. But right now, the best answer that I can give you to your really, again, I just think it's a good, honest question to be asking, is that McGroarty's a pro now. Yeager isn't. And McGroarty's going through what Yeager's still going to have to go through. And the way to judge or compare both of them isn't going to be available to us until one of them is in Pittsburgh and one of them is in Winnipeg. I appreciate hearing from you. I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.